Supreme Chancellor Obi-Wan Kenobi by Stone Freak. Chapter 43. Ahsoka receives Jarkai lessons from Obi-Wan. Ahsoka takes a small break from her battle against a training droid just as the doors to the training salles open. Master Obi-Wan, she says, extinguishing her lightsabers and heading over to him.
Ah, Ahsoka, doing a bit of saber practice before shipping out.
Master Obi-Wan strokes his beard and smiles at her. Yes, Master. I wanted to practice my Jarkai with the training droids before I'm back in the field again. Ahsoka finds herself returning the smile. It's weird seeing him out of the pieces of armor he used to wear in the field, but it's good to see him at all. He's been so busy that the last time she saw him in person was in a bed in the halls of healing, recuperating from being poisoned. Pale and tired.
How is your Jarkai coming along?
He eyes the two lightsabers she's still holding. I'm improving. Unfortunately, I can't get as much battle practice down when I'm in the field as I'd like. She trails off and looks away. I don't feel quite ready to start using it in a real battle yet. Master Obi-Wan hums in acknowledgement and nods slightly, arms crossed against his chest. He looks at her steadily, and she can only wonder what he's thinking.
Yes, Anakin doesn't favor Jarkai. As with most Jedi, he has enough training to utilize it, but he's generally more confident with one blade than he is with two.
She knows that. She doesn't think there's anyone in her age group who hasn't heard about how Anakin Skywalker lost his arm while utilizing Jarkai against Count Dooku. It's never been spoken about officially, of course, but everyone has heard the rumors. It is known as a gamble, an attempt to throw Dooku off, but one that had ultimately cost Anakin dearly. I know, Master. I was hoping maybe I could catch one of the saber instructors before we head out, but they seem to be busy with classes. A training droid was better than nothing, even if Ahsoka had hoped for a bit of proper instruction.
A wise girl. What a shame none of them were available to you today.
He strokes his beard again, and he's definitely contemplating something. She can tell. He always does that beard-stroking gesture when he's thinking, or perhaps more accurately, plotting.
I might be flattering myself now, but I have been told I am a rather effective Jarkai user. Perhaps I could give you some instruction?
Hope and excitement flares on Ahsoka's chest. Yes! She says before she can stop herself. Who would turn down private teaching in saber forms from one of the most skilled swordsmen in the entire order? No one! That's who! Master Kenobi coughs a laugh into his fist, and she can see the upturn of his mouth. That's when her brain catches up with her, and her excitement dies a quick death. Master Obi-Wan is so busy lately. How can he possibly have time to teach her? She's not his Padawan or anything. Deep breaths. Thank you very much for the offer, Master, but... She trails off, slightly uncertain how to word it before she decides to just press on. But are you sure you have the time? Aren't you very busy? He hasn't been in the field with her and Master Anakin or without them. In fact, as far as she knows, he hasn't left Coruscant at all since the vote, because he's been so busy with everything. Can he really take time to train someone who isn't even his Padawan?
Don't worry about that, Ahsoka. In fact, today is the day of the week allotted to my post as council member, which means I'm stationed in the temple, rather than the Chancellor's offices.
Okay, that doesn't really explain anything. But shouldn't you be with the council then? He smiles at her.
When I joined the council this morning for today's session, I was told that there is no session to be had, and my only duty for the day is to relax. While they technically have no authority to order me to do so, it is a cruel twist of fate that I somehow outrank all of them now. The way Master Yoda waved his stick around promised lots of bruised shins in my future unless I actually took the day off.
He huffs out a small laugh.
So here I am.
He waves a hand vaguely across the salles with a roll of his twinkling eyes. Ahsoka tries to stop the grin and the giggle before they form, but she's not quite fast enough. She can perfectly imagine just the waving motion Master Yoda must have done with his gamer stick. Well then, Master Kenobi, I would be honored to have you teach me. Ahsoka watches Master Obi-Wan work his way through warm-up katas. She doesn't recognize them because they're clearly Jarkai katas, but she studies them carefully and tries to commit as many of them to memory as possible.
He starts slowly, but soon his movements pick up speed. Every single one is graceful and controlled, beautiful but deadly, and yet it looks so effortless. One day, Ahsoka wants to be able to move like that. One day, she will move like that. She moves occasionally in gentle stretches to keep her muscles warm and pliant. She has a feeling she's going to need it. Master Obi-Wan comes to a halt. Well then, Ahsoka, are you ready?
Yes!
Her eyes sharpen in determination, and she enters a wide, half-crouched stance, one leg forward with most of her weight on her back leg. She raises her arms, one up across her chest and the other over her head, but she doesn't turn on either lightsaber yet. Master Kenobi surveys her form for a short moment before he comes to himself. I think you should begin with using the standard grip rather than your customary reverse one, he says as he takes up the same opening stance, though not quite mirroring her.
But I always use the reverse grip,
she says, pursing her lips and squinting her eyes in displeasure. Ah, he looks at her, face placid. Tell me, Ahsoka, how long have you been using a lightsaber? She blinks in and tilts her head to the side. Where did that question come from?
Since I was 5, like all Jedi. I mean, it was only practice sabers back then, but the principle is the same.
He nods to himself. And how long have you been using the reverse grip? She pauses. Oh! She closes her eyes and sighs, letting her arms fall as she leaves the opening stance and instead relaxes.
So you're saying I should start with the standard and when I have the basics down, switch to the reverse grip?
Exactly. You already had the basics for one saber combat when you started using the reverse grip. Give yourself the same time with dual sabers. He smiles at her, and she feels a small burst of pride and hope in her chest. Go too fast, and you'll only suffer in the long run. Patience, young one.
Yes, Master. She smiles despite her slight embarrassment.
Maybe she was struggling because she's demanding too much of herself right now. She nods at him and slides back into the stance, this time with a regular grip on her lightsabers. Good, Master Obi-Wan says with a nod. Now follow me and I'll show you the first few forms you should know. He moves slowly but fluidly, and she does her best to follow his movements. Her muscles are screaming, and she's sweating profusely as she moves to block a slash from Master Kenobi. They've been fighting for so long. How can his breathing still be so calm when she's been panting for breath for what feels like an eternity? That moment of distraction costs her, and she finds one of his blades at her throat. Time freezes. Neither move. Ahsoka's chest heaves with pants, and she swallows harshly. Sola, she says in what is almost a whisper, and slowly lowers her sabers and deactivates them. Immediately, Master Obi-Wan follows, clipping his own saber to his belt, holding the borrowed one loosely in his left hand. Well done, Ahsoka, very well done indeed. Her heart thumps in her chest, and a wide grin spreads on her face. She feels like she's advanced so much in just a few hours with a teacher. Her muscles are aching, and she's exhausted. But at the same time, she feels so alive! Come on, let's go sit down and have a drink of water. You've certainly earned it, Master Obi-Wan says and moves toward one of the benches. She follows him and just about collapses on the bench, still panting for breath. She takes the offered bottle of water and downs roughly half of it before she pours the rest on her face. A chuckle makes her turn to look at Master Kenobi, who's drinking from his own bottle with his typical refinery, and gives him an arched look. He simply shakes his head at her and keeps drinking. How are you not tired, Master? I'm exhausted! She's not whining like a youngling, not at all, but she can't help the small sting in her pride. She knows better, because he's one of the best swordsmen in the Order. Of course she isn't going to be on his level. But the sting remains. You forget, young one, that I am a master of Soresu, the form of defense and endurance. His face is serene, but there's a glimmer in his eyes, she can tell. One of the chief strategies of Soresu is to outlast your opponent. I would be a poor excuse of a master if I could not outlast a Padawan, even one as skilled as you. She fakes an annoyed huff, but takes it for the compliment she knows it is, and he outright smiles at her again. It's weird, really, to think of him as her grandmaster.
He doesn't seem old enough for the title, even though she knows that he is her grandmaster from a lineage perspective. Then again, their lineage also technically has Dooku in it, so perhaps thinking about it too much is a bad idea. Still, you're a reckless little one. You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might make it as mine. The words feel so long ago, but they echo in her head nevertheless. Why is she even thinking about it? It's not like she'd ever want to change masters, even if she could. There's no point in asking. Then again, better to know and be able to lay it to rest rather than keep wondering. Master Obi-Wan? She trails off. Should she really do this? Maybe it's better if she doesn't. Ahsoka nearly sighs at her own indecision. Where's her recklessness now? What is it, Ahsoka? He turns to her and rests his water bottle against his knee, face calm but attentive. Master once said that I was too reckless to be able to make it as your Padawan. Do you think so too? There's a brief moment of silence before Master Kenobi starts laughing. Ahsoka leans back and blinks in surprise. It might not be a full-on belly laugh or anything, but this might just be the first time she's ever heard Master Obi-Wan laugh so fully at all. Not just a dry chuckle or smiles that speak volumes. Master! Is the thought of her succeeding as his Padawan that preposterous? Oh, Anakin! Master Obi-Wan says to her surprise. He shakes his head. I'm afraid your master must have forgotten most of his own time as a Padawan if he said that to you. After all, he made it as my Padawan, and you are no more reckless than he is. Quite a bit less so, I must admit. To hear those words is more relieving than she thought it would be. There's such a relief, in fact, that she lets out a sound that's a horrible mix between a snort and a giggle, and quickly covers her mouth and nose with her hands, eyes wide in horror at the noise. I think you would have done just fine as my Padawan, Ahsoka. He pauses then and gives her a small conspiratorial smile. Though I don't believe you would like to trade masters, would you? Not on my life! She laughs and lets her hands fall into her lap. No, she wouldn't change her master for anything in the world. He might not teach her Jedi, but he's the best master she could ask for anyway. One more thing, Ahsoka. She turns to him, surprised. Once you start using Jedi as your primary form, take care not to let your skills with a single saber degrade. One of the dangers of being a Jedi user is becoming too reliant on the second blade. He looks serious, and she considers the thought. She had planned to go over to Jedi completely, but if Master Obi-Wan says she should keep her one saber skills honed, then he's likely right. I will. Thank you for the lesson, Master. She bows her head to him. I think it's time for me to head to the freshers and then finish prepping. We ship out tomorrow, after all. Ahsoka gets to her feet with a small grunt. She's still slightly buzzing with adrenaline, but she knows it'll go away soon. She'll sleep well tonight, as she always done when she's physically exhausted. Yes, sounds like a good idea. I should be heading off too, I believe, he says as he hangs his borrowed saber on the wall among the other practice sabers before he too gets off the bench. They leave the Salets together in a comfortable silence, but just outside the doors, Ahsoka stops. Master Obi-Wan? She hesitates for a brief moment. Maybe when I return to Coruscant the next time, you could give me another lesson? Maybe if she smiles hopefully enough, he'll agree to it. I'd be delighted to, Ahsoka. His warm hand closes over her shoulder and gives it a small squeeze before he gives her a slight wave and a smile, striding swiftly but unhurried down the hall. She looks after him for a few moments, unsure why the sight of his back walking further and farther away seems to unsettle her, like a squirming sensation in the back of her mind, a cold lump in her stomach. It's nothing, she thinks and shakes her head. With a determined nod, she heads off to her and Master Anakin's apartments to get clean.